Good morning, dear children. Wishing everybody a fantastic and fabulous Friday. Moving ahead with the steps to prevent the virus from spreading, that is the COVID-19. Let us revise that we need to wash our hands often with soap and water. We should avoid touching our eyes, nose, and mouth when we are out of our houses. Number 3, we need to cover or cough the sneeze with a tissue and definitely wear a mask at all times if we are out of the house. And we need to disinfect the frequently touched objects and the surfaces if we are touching them. And number 5, we have to avoid the close contact with people who are sick. We do not shake hands, we do not hug them, we do not go close to them, and definitely try and stay away from people who are already suffering from cold, cough, or have fever. And the last one, we need to stay home if you yourself are sick, and you need to be staying away from the virus at all times. Here is a pledge also, so that we can actually remember by taking a pledge as to we need to fight the COVID-19 and stay healthy at all times. So you can repeat your names after the letter I. I will be taking my name. You can repeat the pledge in your houses. I, Preeti, commit to be vigilant and bear in mind at all times the risk to myself and my colleagues from COVID-19. I promise to take all necessary precautions that prevent the spread of this deadly virus. I promise to follow and encourage others to follow the key COVID appropriate behaviors. To always wear a mask, that is to cover the face, especially when in public places. To maintain a minimum distance of 6 feet from others. To wash my hands regularly, frequently, and thoroughly with soap and water. Therefore, together we can win this fight against COVID-19 and live a semi-normal life. Let's adhere to all these rules and regulations and consider this to be the new normal of today's world. Now it's time for the most important and interesting physical division of Australia to be discussed, that is your Central Lowlands. In the previous class, we had learnt about the Eastern Highlands, that is the entire Great Dividing Range area. We had clearly understood that these are the mountains which are running parallel to the east coast from Cape York Peninsula in the north, which continue down to the island of Tasmania. That is from Cape York Peninsula up to your island of Tasmania. And we had clearly marked it in our maps also, the Great Dividing Range and the Australian Alps. I hope everyone has their map prepared, because this is the same map that we will be using today also to mark our Artesian Basin. So children, when we are talking about the Central Lowland, first let us understand which area it is. Here we had marked the Eastern Highlands. So if we leave out this much of an area and this much of an area, if we leave out as your... Now children, when we divide this entire Australia into eastern, western, northern, southern portions, we'll see what portion lies in the central part. I would request everybody to open their political maps while I'm just trying to cover up the eastern portion. Now this is appropriately, this is the eastern portion because we had marked it as the Eastern Highland. Now it is in a curvature form, so it's difficult to cover it up. But partially if I cover it up, it will be like this. Then if I have to cover up the western portion of Australia, this much portion will be taken away. Then we will have just the central portion mainly of the states like Northern Territory, that is the eastern portion of your Northern Territory, your South Australia, that is the northern and the southern portion, nearly just the northern portion of Australia. You have your New South Wales area here, And your Queensland, basically the entire, nearly the most of Queensland area has this occupancy of the Artesian Basin area in it. So if you open your political maps, you can see that clear. Or in fact, I'll show it to you. Here, children, when you're looking at your Australia political map, you can see your states, and this is the central portion where you have your Great Artesian Basin, which is the main feature of Australia, and we are going to discuss that in detail today. So now that we know the area, let us know the extent also clearly. Here, children, what you need to actually memorize is the extent that they lie between the Eastern Highlands and the Western Plateau. We have already seen that in the map. They extend from the Gulf of Carpentaria in the north to the Encounter Bay in the south. Here again in this map you can see from your Gulf of Carpentaria area to the Encounter Bay. We have marked both the things in our maps while we were marking the water bodies. So we have no difficulty in understanding the entire extent of your Artesian Basin, your central lowland area. First we need to understand the central lowland area, and in between that the main feature is the Artesian Basin. So here when we are understanding the extent, we need to revise that it extends from the Gulf of Carpentaria in the north to Encounter Bay in the south, forming the world's largest Artesian Basin. Now here the first feature when we said was it lies between the Eastern Highlands, which we have already marked in the map, and the Western Plateau. Now that is the next physical feature that we will be doing in the next class. Right now we are just going stepwise. First we had marked the Eastern Highlands. Now we are doing the central lowland area. Now why is it called lowland? Understand that. When I say that here I have Eastern Highlands, that is the Great Dividing Range, and here in the west I am saying you have your Western Plateau area. Plateau is also a highland which is flat on the top. So here that is kind of a tableland. So in between area, automatically here also you have an highland on the right and on the left. So automatically this lowland, this central area is a lowland area in between, or is it a area of depression? Now if I have to show it to you, then it is a this kind of a structure that is formed, that is on both the sides it has highland, and therefore in between it becomes a curvature out here where you have the water which has accumulated in the Artesian Basin. And this we'll discuss when I'm explaining you what do you mean by that. First of all, understand the extent of the central lowlands, that it lies between two raised areas on either side, that is your Eastern Highland and your Western Plateau. Now when you understood the entire structure of the central lowlands, it will be easier for you to understand how was the Great Artesian Basin formed and why is it the largest Artesian Basin in the world. Now for coming back to the characteristics of the central lowland are that they are rainless and flat low-lying area. We've already told you it's a low-lying area in between two highland areas, and it is flat also and it is rainless also. So make sure children you memorize these features. Now children, here is the official map of the Great Artesian Basin, but we are not going to make it so precisely. So I've already given you a map which we will be shading the entire Artesian Basin area. The one which is shaded blue out here, we'll be shading it either green or you can use the color blue also. Before we start shading the Great Artesian Basin in our maps, let us first understand what it is. The term basin means where a layer of porous or pervious rock lies between two layers of impervious rocks and acts as a reservoir. Very difficult, right? It seems to be very difficult, but it's very simple when we understand. So let me show you a few things to make you understand it properly and easily. So here it says where a layer of porous or pervious rock. So porous means which allows the water to seep in, right? So to show the pervious or the porous layer, here I have some sponge, and we all know sponge allows water to soak. It soaks up water and it retains it also, unless and until you squeeze it out, right? The next one here we read is 2 layers of impervious rocks. Now what is impervious? Impervious is opposite of pervious. That is, it does not allow water to seep inside. So what have we to show you that? Here we have, I've just taken 2 layers of styrofoam which does not allow water to seep in. And that I will show you when I pour the water, that this allows water to seep in and this does not allow. Now let us understand the second term, that is the aquifer. Now what is that? A layer of rock capable of holding water. Now which is that layer? That is your pervious layer or the porous layer which has allowed the water to soak in. So that is the layer of rock capable of holding water, and if there is a hole in it or a well which has been dug into it, it allows it to pass through it also. The next term is the artesian well. When a well is bored into the aquifer, that is the pervious layer in which the water was stored, if a hole is dug up to that area, the water which is under pressure. Now, under which pressure? Under the pressure of 2 impervious layers. That is the layers which are blocking it in between or creating an aquifer. I'll be explaining that completely, so don't get confused. Just understand the terms first, then I will use the same terms while I'm doing the entire depiction of it, which is under pressure of the 2 layers, and because of a great time of accumulation of water, gallons and gallons of water through thousands and millions of years it has been there. So it has a lot of pressure over it, and therefore it gushes out spontaneously when a well or a hole is dug into it. I hope we have just understood the basics of these 3 terms, because these are the terms which I will be using to explain the Great Artesian Basin. Here, children, I have a few things to make you understand the entire Artesian Basin formation. So here I have a layer of porous rock or a porous layer, and 2 layers which are impervious or non-porous and do not allow water to pass through them. And this, I have already explained, is the shape of the central lowlands. You have your your eastern highlands, that is your Great Dividing Range, and your western plateau on the other side, creating a central lowland area. Just to show you all, I can show you that if I pour water over this sponge, it will absorb water easily and it will not allow it to flow anywhere, except it will be absorbed inside. And we all know that sponge absorbs water. Here is a strip of styrofoam. Obviously, it will not even absorb a minutest drop of water, and it will all spill over. As you can see, it has already spilled over all the water, and it is not going to absorb any form of water at all. So it becomes your impervious or non-porous layer. Now let us arrange the layers of the Artesian Basin. Now this becomes your bedrock, and now I have 1 layer of pervious rocks which I have kept it at the base. Now I'll dip my entire sponge into water so that it is, or in fact, if I just lay it out here and pour water over it from the sides, like the rain seeps inside the layers of the earth exactly in the same manner from either sides where the water seepage is allowed. That is, so here children, I have kept one more impervious or non-porous layer above it. So what do you see in this, children? One white layer, one yellow, and the other one white on top. That is, when we are describing, we again go back to the same definition. Here children, what do you see in this? Exact formation of Artesian Basin, that where a layer of porous or pervious rock lies between two layers of impervious rocks, and that acts as a reservoir. It becomes an artesian basin. So here you can see your entire lowland area, central lowland area of Australia, in which you have a aquifer, that is a layer of rock, that is the yellow layer that you can see, which has been sandwiched in between the two impervious layers. Like example, for example, if you have two pieces of bread and you put mayonnaise in between, and you just sandwich it exactly like that. So here you have a layer of rock which is capable of holding water, and it is also capable of allowing it to pass through. So now in this, children, I'll be pouring in some water exactly like you have the rainwater which percolates down into the layers of the soil, the water from the sides or from the areas which will allow, because this is a non-porous layer, it will not allow. So I've just made sure that the water seeps in from the sides exactly like in the areas of Australia where the water actually enters through the eastern edges of the basin in Queensland and New South Wales, and it very gradually flows down towards the south and the west. Water gradually makes its way through the pores between the sand grains, and it flows down, and that rate is very, very slow. It flows down at a rate of approximately 1 to 5 meters per year. Now, this stored water eventually exits out through a number of springs and seeps mostly in the southern parts of the basin. Now, here, if I dig a well, or in fact, now if I make a hole in this impervious layer, so whatever the water has been stored in the pervious layer will automatically gush out and form a artesian well. I hope, children, we have understood that this is your central lowland. This is the impervious layers in between which we have the porous or the pervious layer which has formed an aquifer. And now I am going to bore a hole into the impervious layer reaching the aquifer, so that we understand the formation of the artesian well. When a well is bored into the aquifer, the water, now you can just keep on looking at this when I'm just going to push it through so that it is going deep down, and make sure that it reaches the aquifer so that you can see the water oozing out quickly from the well. So you can see a lot of water has spilled out, but most of it is uh, coming out from the sides, because this is an artificial straw which I've just put in, so it's not able to create that pressure which the layers on top are going to create, and from the well there will be a gush of water which will be flowing out. I hope with this very crude demonstration you must have at least understood the meaning of the artesian basin, aquifer, and the artesian well. If you still have any questions, you can type them in the GCR and I will answer them. Now I would request everybody to take out their entire maps of Australia and mark the artesian basin, which has already been marked for you, and shade it green with a light color. You can even shade it blue, that's up to you. Either of the colors are suitable. So now while everybody is shading, I'll keep the camera at shading but let you know about the importance of the Great Artesian Basin. Now, this Artesian Basin is the largest and the deepest artesian basin in the world. And the basin provides the only source of fresh water through most of inland of Australia. That is the central portion. And the Great Artesian Basin became very important supply for the cattle station, irrigation, livestock, and domestic purposes. So basically, that's the main function of water. All of that is provided by the water which they get from the artesian basin itself. So it's a kind of a lifeline for the central Australia, because as we had already discussed in the features that it is a rainless area, hardly any rains. So if the central lowland area is rainless, where is the water percolating from? As I said, the water actually comes down from the relatively higher ground near the eastern edges of the basins in Queensland and New South Wales, and it flows gradually towards the south and the southwest portion of this great artesian basin. The stored water eventually exits through a number of springs, and we have a lot of wells also dug all over. Here I have two pictures to show you how the real artesian well looks like. And these are pictures from Australia itself. To talk about the detailed history of the water of the Great Australian Basin is held in a sandstone layer. Now, this sandstone, during a time when much of what is now inland Australia was below sea level. Now, this central portion was actually once upon a time, trillions of years ago, below sea level. So, the sandstone was then covered by a layer of marine sedimentary rocks, which formed a confining layer, that is the two impervious layers, and thus they trap the water in the sandstone aquifer, exactly like I had shown it to you in the sponge layer. So that became a sandstone aquifer. The eastern edges of the basin was uplifted when the great dividing range was formed, and the other side was created from the landforms of the central eastern lowlands and the great western plateau, which we will be studying later. Let's talk about the last leg, that is the division of central lowland. There are three basic distinctions: the Carpentaria lowlands, the Lake Eyre basin, and the Murray-Darling basin. And we have already marked the Lake Eyre here, and we already know about the River Darling and River Murray clearly, so we know about the basin. So this entire portion of central lowland area of Australia, today we have understood the features in it. Thank you, children. Children, you are requested to make the entire artesian well in your notebooks. Please mark all the labelings properly and make sure you write the answers to the two questions that have been given. Thank you.